Hi there, and welcome back to Culturally Sound. I am here with Brad Beach of Jobvious. He is a pioneer in contingent labor and the staffing industry. It's I'm going to have you just explain contingent labor to me. That's an interesting way to look at things there. How
Yeah,
does that come to be?
yeah, I can uh, explain it really quick. Contingent labor is anybody that is working for an organization but is not an employee.
Gotcha.
So it can be an independent contractor, consultant, contract labor, and it is very prevalent in today's workforce. About 4 out of every 10 jobs in the United States is contingent, and it's a huge industry. Last year, excuse me, 2023, there was about 1.3 trillion in spend on contingent labor.
Goodness.
It's a huge, huge industry.
So is that the gig economy? Is that what we're sort of looking at there? Awesome. Okay.
Precise.
And what, so, I mean, there are a number of platforms that sort of support this. I mean, Deal, WeWork, those types of things. What is different between what you're offering and what those are?
Jobvious is an incentive-based referral platform
Hmm.
where individuals can make passive income, significant passive income,
Hmm.
and it's very, very passive. It's kind of if you look at a LinkedIn, at one point in time, you got an invite to join somebody's network.
Hmm.
You did, you were in their network. Very similar with Jobvious, except the difference is once you join somebody's network, that is the only network that you can be in within Jobvious. And the reason why is, well, the simple answer is it's the only way it works. Um, what happens is our clients populate their requisitions, contingent labor requisitions, into our platform. We have an AI matching algorithm that matches the jobs to all of the participants that are qualified. So, in I'm going to be very simple. It's a little bit more complex, but let's assume, Chandler, that I am in your network. You invited me, and let's say that a job populated in the platform that I was a match for. We'll say it's an HR director, since that's kind of my background. That pays $65 an hour, right? You'll get a notification that says, "Hey, Brad Beach is a match for this job. Do you want to refer him?" At the same time, I will get a notification that says, "You've matched to this opportunity. Would you like to be referred?" I can click yes. If I don't click yes, or if I don't see it, you can ping me through the platform and talk to me through the platform. Let's say I'm interested, and then you hit refer. That then sends my qualifications through the platform to the stakeholder at the client site. In the event that there is an interview requested, Jobvious coordinates that. After the interview, if I get an offer, Jobvious becomes the employer of record. I start making $65 an hour. And because you referred me, you start making $6.50 an hour for every hour I work throughout the lifetime of the engagement. And in contingent labor, you have a tenure that ranges from, um, in my experience, ranges from 2 months to 2 to 3 years.
Hmm.
So it's very easy. In that scenario, you would be making 13,000 ish in passive income for one referral, and that money gets deposited directly into your bank account every Friday, just like a paycheck.
Wow. That's that's what brought about this idea. I mean, that's
Yeah. So I've been in contingent labor for 30 years, and for anybody that's listening, a lot of people, contingent labor can be considered in the old days temp labor,
hmm
but it's now we refer to it as contingent labor, contract labor. I've been in the business for, like I said, over 30 years. I started my own business 25 years ago, providing staffing, recruitment process outsourcing, direct sourcing, and some other things. We've grown that business to a global provider. So we have offices in Asia, Latin America, Europe. And over the last 4 years, 5 years, I've been noticing that the industry is struggling. with the management of large contingent labor programs. Most of our clients are Fortune 500 clients that have multiple millions of dollars annually in spend. The way that works is they release requisitions and then they import into our platform, right? Similar to what Jobvious does, right? Then we have our recruiters work on them and they identify candidates. They submit those candidates to the client. What was once a very lucrative business and where we had sub to hire rates of 14 to 16% has been reduced over the last few years to 7 or 8% at best. And the reason for that is there is an overpopulation of vendors in each of these programs. Clients are engaging in direct sourcing, where they pair off a portion of requisitions, give them to their vendors, but give first dibs, if you will, to a direct sourcing provider. And there isn't a lot of transparency. Okay. So you don't know which recs are being direct sourced. They just magically get canceled after you've submitted people. So there's a lot of things working against us, and it's not sustainable. So I tried to change it by educating clients and putting together data to share with them. But, getting an individual to use their voice in these large entities and to make change is incredibly challenging. It's like turning the Titanic, right? And so I got tired of the industry as it was, and I just thought there has got to be a different path.
Yes.
And one day in an Uber, and I remember it, I'm like, how? And what was compelling to me is the gentleman that picked me up, I was at a restaurant, was on his way home from work. And he's like, yeah, I just turned my Uber on my way home from work. And if I get a ride, great, it helps pay for some gas. I knew of Uber, but I didn't think of it quite that way, right?
Right. Yeah.
There's got to be a way to use this in contingent labor.
Right.
Uber socialized paid for hire transportation. I'm like, how can we socialize contingent labor?
Right.
And essentially that's what Jobvious is. And we came up with a plan, and it was 3.5 years in development. We went live about a year ago.
Good for you. Good for you. And the uptake has been profound, has been.
Oh, the reception?
Yeah.
It's, I have never talked about Jobvious to any of our potential clients where they weren't, wow, that is a great idea. That's brilliant. I had one person, she was with Visa over their global contingent labor. And she said, Brad, you are brilliant. And of course, I'm like, I don't know if I'm brilliant, but when you get fed up with something,
Yes.
You have two choices: either change it or just keep your mouth shut.
Yeah.
And I wanted to change it. So it's been it's been received incredibly well. But one thing I did not predict is people love innovation. They love the concept, but they don't want to be the first.
Right.
Right. And there is that hesitancy that this is new, it's cool. Do I want to risk deploying this? And I tell clients that, like, there's really no risk. You save money using Jobvious. You reward your own employees using Jobvious, and your employee engagement increases. And so it's a win-win-win. It costs nothing to use it until you hire somebody, and they're already spending the money. It's just redirecting it into a different space. So the way that we are talking to our clients about it, or my legacy company that I talked about that was global, was Tailored Management. And so we're going to them and talking to them about it. And what we are encouraging them to do is deploy this with your associates. Let all of your employees create networks, and then your requisitions populate in the platform. and they can earn passive income on the contingent labor needs within your own organization. If you're spending $100 million a year, wouldn't you rather redirect that to increase employee engagement within your own team? And, I've never had anybody say no. um, you know, so, and we are on the verge of getting some big companies. We're flying to Atlanta next week to do a presentation for one.
Good for you.
So yeah, so it's very exciting. Um, and I'm confident that, it will be successful. It will be disruptive in contingent labor.
Yeah.
But that's really what's needed. And to me, it just seemed, where should recruiting really belong? In my opinion, it should be out in the world in social circles, right? Um, at least it would be incredibly more efficient and effective if people that knew other people were referring them. Uh, a means to accomplish that, though, just didn't exist until now.
Do you see any metrics or any correlation between the culture of a company and the success of Jobvious within the space? Because I would imagine that those with engaged employees that are using and leveraging their referral network, if those employees enjoy where they work, those referrals are going to be higher and they're going to have better fit for those that join the team versus those that introduce Jobvious where the culture isn't as flourishing and the referrals aren't as, they don't want to invite people into the business. And like, do you see a correlation with those metrics? Do you measure those metrics?
Well, we do measure all of the metrics,
Mhm.
but to answer your question, um, companies that don't have a flourishing culture can improve their culture with Jobvious.
I totally agree.
Because it is a reward to their associates, showing appreciation, showing trust, faith in their employees, and letting their employees feel as if they are part of a bigger picture plan,
Mhm.
as opposed to whatever their daily routine and their daily tasks are. And when you engage them in something larger, they're more fulfilled. So it dramatically helps improve culture. And we've had some clients that actually say that um, when they're recruiting on their own for direct hire, they talk about Jobvious in the interview because many times that is the benefit or the appeal that makes them accept the job
Interesting.
with them as opposed to another company. Like why, I can work here and they're giving me access to this platform where I can earn passive income, where I can partake in, the future of talent. Um, that sounds exciting. And so they end up choosing one of our clients as opposed to somebody else.
Yes.
So there's many benefits. Obviously, you increase retention because if an employee refers somebody and they're making $150, $200 a week on them, you have a built-in advocate, right? That is going to ensure that person's happy and keeps them there, and counsels them when needed, because they don't want to lose that income.
Right. Yeah, there's a retention strategy built into that infrastructure. That's an interesting point. So how did I mean, we heard sort of the moment in the Uber, but you don't decide to be an entrepreneur in a moment in an Uber. What led you to have the confidence or the belief? Was that something in early childhood that were you the guy out there with the lemonade stand, trying to push as a salesperson? Were you naturally entrepreneurs as a younger person, or did something strike a chord? What does that look like for you?
I think that I've always been a dreamer.
Eh, Interesting.
I always wanted to be successful. And it's funny because I grew up in a small farm town in Ohio, and after I started having success, um, a lot of the people there were like, "We always knew that you would," you know. And I guess I was never afraid to take risks. I became an entrepreneur because, after college, I worked for about 7.5 years in this industry for a- one of the world's largest companies, um, and did contingent labor. And I realized, and I had success there. I was promoted. I was a manager. I managed multiple offices. And I realized one day that I could not buy into large corporate culture. Some people can, and that's great. I couldn't because I needed to understand the reason, the why. And oftentimes you just don't get that in large corporations. And, everything was very rigid, not flexible. You manage based on certain, activities, metrics that someone way up designed that is completely out of touch. And if they don't hit those metrics, regardless of how successful they are, you had to have, conversations with them, and I just couldn't buy into it. So one day I literally was talking to my leader. It was the regional president. And she said, I think the best thing for me to do right now is to leave and just not come back. And I did. After 6.5 years, I walked out and didn't return.
Wow.
Um, and I didn't have a job. Uh, and so, of course, I had that oh shit moment when I got
Yep.
home. Like, what
Yeah.
did I do?
Yep.
But, things worked out. I started doing this out of my bedroom. Um, I think that I was well respected in the business, and people liked me um, because I'm pretty transparent, pretty genuine. I am who I am, and mm, I and so I got opportunities, and a lot of those opportunities came from people that worked with me, worked for me in the past. That got into roles of authority, and they wanted to give back.
Mhm.
And it's at that time when I realized that um, I believed and embraced in the idea of paying it forward. Investing in relationships and in people without an expectation of anything in return. And I do that often with clients. And eventually, if it's meant to be, it'll be, and it comes back to you. And uh, if you're a good person, if you're honest, and genuine, and you care about your client and your people, good things happen.
Particularly today, I think the investment in the relationship has never been more important than it is today. And I don't know if you have a perspective on that, but in my experience, and more now than ever, I feel like, having these types of conversations, and investing time in getting to know one another rather than just shooting off a quick email, having that FaceTime, be it digitally or be it in person, is so critical to maintaining those relationships, and it often opens the door to that next opportunity, more now so than it did even 5 years ago. Are you experience the same sort of phenomenon, or do you?
Sure. Yeah, without question. It was, when COVID happened, we used to travel to client sites and visit with people, and then COVID happened and all that stopped. And then everybody started doing this, right? The Zoom meetings. And they will suffice, but it's not the same thing
Yeah.
as seeing people in person. Yeah, in with the advent of AI, and there are so many repetitive outreaches and tools for those repetitive outreaches that people have become somewhat numb to email, into chats and all of these other things, myself included, right? Because it seems like everybody, when that happens, I don't know about you, but it feels like they're just reaching out to grab a piece of you, and there's nothing genuine
So
about it. That's
transactional.
it's probably one ping out of 2,000 they sent out that day, and they don't have interest. They say they have interest in getting to know you, but you really know, you know, that's just a veil covering up what their true motives are. Not everybody's like that, but you
Yeah.
get
No,
you get
total,
my point.
total.
And so when I have communication with people, I don't try to sell them anything. I try to understand them,
Mhm.
not just the business, but what's going on with them as a person, because they're equally important. And know what challenges and what struggles they're having. Get them to open up, uh, to be candid and honest. I mean, I would offer my services to a potential client um, for free to help. I just had a call yesterday with the same thing in mind. They were trying to start a contingent labor program because they were going to have a ramp up. And the call was simply about help us understand what we can provide to you to help you decide how to move forward with this. We will provide you with benchmarking data, with anything and everything that you need,
Mhm.
just to help you out. Because I just like doing that, and it's rewarding for me to do that. And I know I have the luxury of doing that because I've been successful. But um, even before that, I had success. It was still very motivating to me to get to know people, genuinely get to know them. Ask them those questions, um, not business related, but um, you know and I don't know if that's lost today. It feels like it, but
There's so much research and so many studies coming out about loneliness, right? And the lonely generation. We've never been more isolated. We find comfort on our devices rather than with one another. And well, I can definitely see how we get to that point. I I don't know, like, where does it go from here, right? Where the social metrics and networks are, their usage are finally trending down for the first time ever. The networks are frantically trying to figure out how to bring everyone back. But the younger generation is stepping, having digital free days, and they put their phone in a box when they get home, and they're out in parks throwing the frisbee, reading books, talking to one another. Um, you don't see, there's a definite age break there where, the 35 and up aren't represented in those parks. They're, but is that because they're having families, and they're doing those kinds of things, and they've got,
no,
more return to work is a thing, and they're in the office, and not throughout the days, and maybe they're out there with their kids in the afternoons or at night. I don't know. But, how do we, what does that future look like to you when you're in the space of providing labor and connection and network to organizations and at enterprise levels? Do you have any
yeah,
thoughts?
I think first of all, I didn't know that the usage of the social media platforms was down, but I'm glad it is, because it is um, it's an unfortunate. Don't get me wrong. I have my time on social media, um, but it's such an unproductive way to exist, when there are so many other things that one could be doing. It's not rewarding. It's not fulfilling. You get more fulfillment out of cutting your grass than looking at social media. The future of employment, I think, is going to trend back to most likely what it was pre-COVID. Um, I think that COVID presented us, a storm um, with employment where individuals were working from home because it was necessary. And then there was so much social pressure on leaders that if they brought individuals back into the office, that they were just evil dictators and money hungry, bad people. There are real metrics and real data that indicates that individuals just were not as productive or fulfilled or bought in, when working remote. In my opinion, I mean, the younger generation in their 20s and 30s, uh, they don't know what they're missing. There are people that work here that started remote and that had never worked in an office until I made them come back. Um, Most of the, intelligence that I gained and most of the wisdom that I have was acquired through interactions and experiences with my coworkers. And those are things that you are not going to get in a remote world. And I can't imagine, I just had this conversation with someone earlier. Imagine a world where the leaders in all of these organizations worked remote their entire life and grew up working remote. I mean, how does that make you feel? I mean, does that create a lot of confidence in their ability to understand people when they were never in an ecosystem together with people fighting as one? It just personally, I just don't think it's possible. And you build camaraderie and team spirit, and it's like creating a football team. I'm in Ohio, so like Ohio State, right? And you're zooming in for each individual player at home, coaching them and having them train. And then, they get together once a week for a game. I mean, how successful do you think that would be?
Yeah, I mean, that would be an interesting study to see what that would look like and where the drawbacks were, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, but I don't see it as any different. You have a team of people on the football team, right, that have to understand how to work together,
How
how
to move as
to,
one.
right, right. And you can't do that if you aren't continuously interacting. And half my communication here is on the fly. I think of something at the last minute, I walk over and talk to somebody. And if I don't have that, I'm not, typical entrepreneur, I've got ADD and it pops in my head. And if I don't hit somebody up with the question, it's gone within like 3 minutes, and I don't think of it again. And, to the point where people, they record sometimes where in meetings what I'm saying because they say, "Oh, that was good. Can you repeat it back to me?" I'm like,
I have no idea what that was.
no chance. They call it like my old school moment.
Yeah.
When Will was up there on stage and, he blacks out and spits out all that information. And you're like, my God, where did that come from? He's like, what happened? And so,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
No, I can completely, I can understand that. And I have many of those multiple times and a day as well, and hey, that was really brilliant. Can you share that? But no, I can't, unfortunately. And we'll have to see if that the muse offers it to me again, I suppose.
Right.
And so I mean, obviously you're a proponent of bringing everyone back into the office. What is that? Have you experienced much pushback, or was that embraced within your team? What did that look like on your side? Because I know it's the schools of thought are sort of divisive, and I'm not looking to say either side is right or wrong. I'm just looking to sort of get your perspective on what that looked like.
Yeah. It was brutal.
Mm-hmm.
At first, I got tired of fighting it.
Yeah.
And knowing what was going on. And so I made the decision everybody's going to have to come back into the office.
Mm-hmm.
I got a lot of, evil stares.
Yeah.
But after a couple months, it was fine. People liked the interaction with their peers.
Mm-hmm.
They missed it. They
Mm-hmm.
just didn't know they did.
Yeah.
Doing happy hours, at the end of the day, just come in, hey, let's go get a drink. Or, you make some of your best friends at work. And where else, social media isn't real. You're not going to, I mean, personally, I don't make friends on social media. I mean, I make friends with the people that I interact with, the people I trust. And to me, work is a great place. My best friends have been made at work ever since I was in college. Um, and I think it doesn't have to be forever, but when you're 20 something to 30 something, mid 30s, I think you really need to be in the office. You don't know what you don't know.
Right.
When you become a little bit more seasoned, then I support a hybrid work environment.
Right.
You know, I have no issue with that. Um, but for the younger generation, I think we're doing them a disservice if we don't provide them the experience of working in an office where they can learn. Um, that's my philosophy.
Yeah, no, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that perspective. And I think, there's schools of thought around, building the right systems, you get the right results. And I think, there's a time and place for that. But as you said, I think there's also space for, you know, how do you learn? How do you integrate with a team? How do you work together in close proximity? And how do you, get answers questioned quickly when you're at a distance? Well, now you're spending on infrastructure instead of rent, I suppose, digital infrastructure to sort of support that communication rather than, supporting the office space and the physical presence. So kind of a kind of a interesting shift or change there. Now, with the rise of the AI agent, how does that disrupt your next 5 years? There was something at Davos said that, majority of the workforce is going to be replaced by AI within the next 18 months. Now, that's a heck of a statement based on, where generative AI is and how far away general AI is. What does that look, what does that outlook look like for you?
Well, I think AI is going to add value in our industry.
Mm-hmm.
I don't buy that it's going to replace a lot of people in 18 months.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Old enough to know that I was in this business when the internet was created. And when the internet was created, they said, oh, the internet, it's going to take away the need for recruiting, in all of these staffing providers. Um, and then job boards, monster.
Yes.
Oh, they're not going to, it's just, you know, and I use this example with somebody else. I said, if you were a hiring authority at a client and I came to you and said, hey, I've got this great company that's going to provide you talent when you need it at a reasonable cost. Um, we do all of our sourcing via AI. It vets via AI the candidates, right? AI schedules the interviews, recaps the skills of the individual, and then manages them after they're deployed. I don't think anyone feels really good about that on the client side, the
Yes.
end user,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Um, we're not there.
Mhm.
One day, maybe we will be, but I see that as many years out. Right now, AI is great where you get candidates that apply for a job,
Mhm.
and AI will look at the qualifications of each candidate and then stack rank them based on what it deems most qualified to least qualified. AI does great with when someone applies for a job, reaching out and doing an AI assessment based on the job description.
Mhm.
That's great too. Um, but I, I mean, I don't see AI in the foreseeable future stepping in as, my employee relations team, where our associates are talking to an AI agent. I just don't see it happening. Maybe some variation of that, but I kind of equate it to the automated answering. If you call it like an American Airlines or a Visa or
Right.
somebody,
Mhm.
right? It prompts you, hit one or hit two or tell me what you need. And, 0, 0, 0, 0. That's what I do, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Uh, because it's not like it it only goes so far. And
Sure.
and sometimes you just need to talk to an intuitive human being that is empathetic to your plight, that is going to respond accordingly with comfort, and keep you as a patron of that organization. I don't think that will, and especially an employee, you know, um, I just don't see that happening.
So, what is the next exciting adventure for Jobvious? Like, what are you excited about seeing in the next 6 months, year, 2 years?
Well, I'm excited about the deployment in a couple large organizations.
Hmm.
I'm excited about we have a integration going on with an AI assessment and verification
Hmm.
platform.
Hmm.
We are talking to a couple other direct sourcing companies. It's a SaaS platform as well. The leaders in the industry about partnering up with them.
Hmm.
Those are, forming those partnerships that are going to help us um, provide the opportunity for both clients and the world to capitalize on Jobvious. Um, one day I would love to say that out of that 1.3 trillion in annual spend,
Hmm.
5 billion of it is going through Jobvious being reallocated, a lot of it being reallocated to the communities and, the everyday person. Good for you that you have good friends that trust you or people that that trust you. You've spent your life building, nurturing this network, and now you're going to get 20 grand in passive income.
Hmm.
That's wonderful. What's more rewarding than that? I mean, for me, nothing.
Right.
It was never about money. It was about legacy and giving back and doing what seems to be, the right thing. And I also like shaking things up a little bit, obviously.
I can imagine.
Yeah.
What's your perspective, or what's your take on um, personality assessments, and how much does that play a role in placement within to a position? Do you do any sort of pre-vetting of people before they go into their next role? Is that included in the platform? What does that look like to you?
It's so for a client, they can determine if they want any referral before it comes to their dashboard assessed. And what that means is that the AI tool looks at the job description and then generates an assessment of skills that are needed, questions that will verify that this person has the skill. So the client can make that decision before every referral is sent to them, where they get an assessment as well. The client can make that determination only on people they select for an interview. It's really up to the client. A lot of clients don't need the assessments. The assessments are typically for more complex roles, such as, information technology, finance, financial analysis, um, data management, as far as like, customer service or sales or, anything because life sciences,
Mhm.
those would use assessments. If you're getting an engineer, for example, a bioengineer, or even a structural engineer, you would probably want an assessment. Although the license kind of takes part for that. If you're licensed, you're qualified.
Sure.
Um, so yeah, now that's different. A skills assessment different from a personality
Hmm. Hmm.
assessment. Um, the personality assessment, I I think it's fun to do, but do I put a lot of merit in them? No,
Yeah.
not really. Because they're very subjective. In I'm kind of a black and white type of guy, and I just, it's just too difficult for me to, you know, wrap my brain. It's kind of, for me, it's kind of like witchcraft, I mean, I know that there's value. I don't want to discredit
Sure, sure,
it,
sure, sure.
but it's just not right for me.
Just a point shy of an astrology.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Precise. Yeah,
And
exactly.
so once you find, what are you seeing as far as longevity within the platform? So someone joins up, they get referred, they do they create a network of their own at that point?
Yes.
Okay. And then they build out that network. There's Once that network is created, are they looking to poach people from other networks to join their network? Or what is there competition within the networks? What does that look like?
No, you can't poach somebody from another network.
Okay.
Look, there's billions of people in
Of
this
course.
world, and it's with the technology that we have today. I suspect that most people have networks all over the place, and so the network can be as big and vast as you want as long as you can manage it. The only way someone can get out of a network is if there is an appeal that their network champion isn't doing their job. Uh, and if that's the case, then we would release everybody in that person's network and reassign them to other networks of proven, network champions.
Gotcha.
Um, but so the end game really is, um, I see people expanding their network ongoing, until, of course, everybody in the world is in it, which I don't know if that would ever happen, but I guess it's possible. Um, and so there's always opportunity, but if you have 50, 60, 100 people in your network, chances are you're going to make passive income ongoing, to the point that I have had several individuals ask me, after I create my network and it's generating 30, 40, 50 grand in passive income a year, can I sell it to somebody? And I never thought of that. And I thought, well, right now we haven't you know, created anything that would allow that to happen. But if a lot of people are desiring it, I mean, I guess that's something we'd consider. I had someone ask, uh, I could actually, is there anything preventing me from leaving this to my children? Um, this network.
Mm.
Like, no, the network is yours, proprietary to you. You could, yes, transfer, I'm sure, to your children. Because it's like a business. When you build out your network, uh, that is going to yield income to you on a regular basis. And that's the whole purpose and why it was created.
Where So we get it onto additional platforms, or we bring in some more enterprise clients. What does this look like in 10 years to you? Do you have a vision that far out, or are you sort of working with things as they come?
In 10 years, Jobvious isn't, a 10 plus, 20 plus $1 billion business. I,
Mhm.
I mean, honestly, I probably view it as a failure.
Oh, wow, wow.
Um, because a failure only probably in my eyes, right?
Sure.
Because it means I maybe we didn't do a great job, um, populating the message. Um, Maybe we didn't do a great job um, creating the value for the client. I don't know what's to come, what
Sure.
challenges will arise as we grow,
Mhm.
um, but I'm excited to see what they are. Um, I don't really get too scared of that stuff. I, to me, nothing is so big that we can't figure it out.
Sure.
I'm not we're not curing cancer,
Right.
building rockets like
Right.
Elon or, Bezos. This is people.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where I shine.
So, what does scare you? Like, what is the ultimate fear for you?
Yeah. Not being happy.
Hmm.
Yeah. Not being happy, not being mobile, um,
Hmm.
being healthy.
Hmm.
If for some reason I wasn't, and um, and actually I've been down that path. I had cancer in 2019,
Oh wow.
um, and and so that teaches you a lot, and but I got through it, and everything's good now. But it puts everything in perspective.
Sure does.
And when you emerge from something like that on the other side, and it doesn't even have to be cancer, it can be, any kind of monumental obstacle, right?
Mhm, mhm.
Um, you are emboldened and strengthened by that. And that's why I think I've dealt with so much in my life, and I'm sure you have too, that, I mean, I don't know what you could throw at me that would shake me at this point. Um, you know, I don't know what it would be.
Yeah.
So, but like the things that I can control, my health, my happiness, um, and raising my kids right,
Mhm.
not making mistakes, although I've already made plenty.
Sure.
Um, so those are the things that scare me the most.
What is success? If you were to define success, what does success look like for you?
Oh, success for me can take many forms, but ultimately, at the end of the day, success for me is accomplishing something that gives me joy and fulfillment,
Mhm,
makes me happy and makes others happy.
mhm,
Um, you know, I I'm a simple guy. I mean, I take I get a lot of fulfillment out of interacting with the lady behind the counter at the convenience store. Really, and making an effort to have a conversation with her because I know it makes her day better.
yeah.
Um, simple things, and I tell people here, your goal should be to make whoever you interact with's day better
Mhm,
as a result of your interaction.
mhm.
And to me, that aside from everything else, like if you're trying to recruit somebody or trying to sell somebody, that's the first priority, the first objective, because that's memorable,
Mhm,
right? You pitching our services, not so memorable.
mhm.
But if you make somebody's day better, that will sit with that individual for a long, long time.
Yeah. I mean, I think if everyone took that perspective, just take a moment, realize that the person that's frustrated you did not wake up with that intent. Be generous in your assumptions and try to make their day better. Even if they're making it hard for you, maybe that will allow them to sort of pivot and change and adjust how they're attempting to communicate about this piece that's frustrating you. I mean, wouldn't that make the world a better place?
I couldn't agree more. People come into the office with all these different narratives in their
Mm,
head,
mm,
which is, controlling interactions. And, I know I oversimplify things, but we have challenges here.
mhm,
And people are talking about, like, what are the strategies we can do? I'm like, for the love of God, you know, this isn't really that difficult. If people operated under the assumption of positive intent, meaning that Julie did something to really make me mad, and I know she has an alternative motive. Stop.
sure.
Isn't there a second option, possibly, miscommunication or there's a million things,
Sure.
but if you just assume that there's something, otherwise, what I say is, do you think people come in here purposely to, anger you or to try and, destroy the company or
Yeah.
to,
Not that important.
cost us? Yeah. I mean, do you really think people come in here doing that?
Yeah.
And if the answer is no, then okay, let that
Yeah.
sink in.
Yeah.
They aren't trying to do anything to cause us to be upset.
Mhm.
It's, bad interpretation, bad statement that wasn't meant in certain way. It could be anything.
Sure. How would you describe yourself in 3 words?
Oh my God.
Mm, I'm not accepting those 3 words.
Yeah. No, yeah. Curious,
Mhm.
inquisitive.
What's the difference between those 2 for you?
Maybe there isn't much of a difference. Is curious to me is you might not have the question, which is inquisitive
Mm.
yet,
Mhm.
but you still dig in to look.
Mhm.
Mm. So, I question the why behind everything,
Mhm.
which goes back to why I left large corporate America.
Of course.
Um, and I think that um, I would say empathetic.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm.
Are you a quote guy? Do you have quotes that you follow or a mantra that you wake up with, or do you work with any of those bits of inspiration?
Sometimes when, we do town halls
Okay.
and, I've got to get up and do, a rah, rah, rah in front of
Mhm.
300 people.
Yes.
I might listen to some motivating podcasts,
Sure,
or
sure.
something.
Yeah.
But uh, I don't really, I mean, I had crafted like the principles to live by, um, which uh, it kind of, comes from the heart. It's like, you know, here is the way that we should um, operate every day. And it isn't metrics. It isn't about any of that stuff. It's about being genuine and authentic, welcoming to everyone, let people spread their wings, being autonomous. Everybody does things differently. Um, we don't want to be regimented. We don't want to, um, you know, uh, put people in a box. It's all mainly geared towards creating an environment where people can be fulfilled.
Mhm.
And in my life, in my experience, uh, if you worry about the people and creating an environment where they can thrive, be happy, and fulfilled, magically everything else kind of just takes care of itself. You don't have to worry about it. Um, and it's true. I mean, and it's worked for me. And I think that with Jobvious and, the things I'm talking about with culture, I feel very lucky and fortunate. Uh, and I think I've been on a quest to find ways for others to experience the feeling of freedom that you get as an entrepreneur,
Mhm.
right? Where it's easy for me to pivot and go in a different direction with the business, to come up with a great idea or maybe even not a great idea and deploy it, right? I don't answer to anybody. Um, and the quest is, how do I create an environment where they feel free to do all of those things? Um, and that's tough because they do report to somebody. And, you know, it's tough because you've got to make sure that all of the leadership is in lockstep with you, right? And somebody makes a mistake, there isn't criticism. There's, hey, what did you learn?
Mhm.
What would you do different? You know, what's your takeaway? You know, that kind of thing. And that's hard when you have, you know, a bunch of leaders. And I think that that was part of the, you know, the also motivation behind Jobvious is in my mind, I think that in my mind, in my dream, right, you know, this gets distributed and multiple people are finding, um, you know, a better life as a result. And maybe it's 10 grand a year, maybe it's eight, maybe it's 30, but it's certainly going to help,
Mhm.
uh, you know, individuals to become more financially independent. And above that, you know, experience that ownership, um, something that they own, they've created that's actually benefiting other people too.
Mhm.
Mm, You know, now I'm talking about it, I'm like, God, this sounds really corny, right? But mm,
Well, I
I-
I think there's a need for those types of aspirational integrations, right? And I mean, it's never going to be as idyllic as you described, but I think we have to try, and we have to
yeah,
create those spaces to be filled up, and the container has to be molded by people like you, dreamers that take the opportunity to pause and consider and say, this is the shape that it should take. Now fill it with your thoughts, your creativity, your personality, and make it as your own.
yeah. I
That's what
mean, you
that's what I'm
know,
hearing anyways.
yeah. You know, life is short, you know,
Don't you know
no
it?
regrets.
Yeah.
That's one of my things. That's people for me say it like, life is short, no regrets.
Mhm.
You know, everything I've decided hasn't come out to be perfect, but that's okay. I've got some good ones. I've got some not so good ones, and a few bad probably.
Sure.
Um, but I've learned.
Do you have a morning routine that you follow, or do you just sort of pop out of bed, get after it? Do you have an evening routine? What kind of systems do you employ in your day to sort of help and guide your success?
I don't really have a routine in the morning. I mean, I get up. I'm kind of robotic. I get pack kids lunch,
Mm,
uh, get them out the door. My dad picks them up and takes them to work. He's
nice.
84.
Oh, good.
Um, and and um, I make it a priority to make sure I try to go to every event, everything that they are involved with.
Hmm.
Uh, but in the evenings, I usually, you know, take time to talk with my son. Sometimes we'll play some video game together
Nice.
uh, for interaction.
Hmm.
My daughter's 14, so she's largely out socializing somewhere.
Sure.
Mhm. Nowhere to be found in her calendar,
Right.
but that's pretty common. But in the morning, get up, do that, and come into work. I have a standing meeting every morning with Amber, my EA, and she tells me what I need to do. You know, she's kind of my boss, which I need.
We all need a boss like that, of course.
Yeah, you know, I mean, because I can't explain myself. It's just, I guess it is who I am. That you know, I'll wander off into the woods if you don't keep me on a leash, and uh, so I think that that is, uh, yeah, and pretty simple.
Mm,
I think you know, I've coined the phrase that I live in the moment, not because it necessarily means something to anybody else other than me, but my point is that some of the way I've survived some of the challenges and the bad things is I I have a way to process them out that I don't know how. I, you know, I interact with somebody, I'm in the moment, but after that moment, I'm in another moment. And so that moment's gone, right? Um, and and I think that that's served me very, very well in business.
Are you a superhero guy? In Marvel, DC, Batman, Superman? Or are you more of do you have an aspirational mentor or someone that you admire? What does that look like for you?
Um, I don't. I mean, I have a son, so yes, we are Disney subscribers. We've watched all of the movies. Um, and, that's a good question. Um,
If you were to pick one, who
well,
do you think?
I refer, um, I've referred to myself as Superman, only because of all of because he's made of steel and all of the things I've had to live through. I think, like I said earlier, I'm made of steel. There's nothing you could throw at me now
Yeah,
that, that is kryptonite, but that doesn't exist. But,
sure.
uh, and so jokingly, that's, you know, how I don't think of myself as Superman,
Of
but
course.
the man made of steel thing, is why I, reference that. I don't take things too serious. Um, I think like I'm more of a servant leader. I like to have fun. I believe people should socialize at work. Um, we have a ping pong table, golf simulator, pickleball court in here. And if people are playing in the middle of the day, I applaud it.
Yeah,
I don't care.
yeah. Do you how how do you measure productivity or so a lot of the dissonance that comes along with the forced return to work position was you're infantilizing the your workers, you don't trust them, this that the other. You're sitting there saying no, go play pickleball. If you have a family event, go to the family event, but I also want you at the office because we have fun here. I want to have fun with you. I want to see you having fun, but I also want to get jobs and work done. So, let's create that balance. Does
Yeah,
that
it's,
ring
you're
true?
exactly right. Yeah, you're exactly right. And the return to office, it was because I believe it's for the betterment of the business, but I also think it's for the betterment of the associates. It's for more balanced people that I'm afraid that they were going to miss out on things. But part of it was, yeah. I mean, I was I don't want to say maybe lonely, but I think maybe also I mean, I think I was hurt and bothered that people didn't want to come back. I mean, because I created a pretty darn good place to work.
Mhm.
We have unlimited PT. I've taken a lot of non-traditional decisions, like unlimited PTO, and I think I trust people until they give me a reason not
Of
to trust
course,
them.
of course.
And I give them all the luxuries that comes with trust. And I, yeah, I was criticized, during that period,
Yeah,
accused of not caring about the well-being of the people. And this came from folks that had been here 3+ years. Um, and yeah, it was hurtful because I thought, you know me, you've worked here with me. How can you say that? Um, and, uh, but again, uh, it made me a better person, leader.
how did you approach that conflict? Because that had, like you said, that had to hurt a little bit, right? Like, you trusted them, you thought you knew them, they
Yeah.
came at you with these criticisms that you felt weren't true. How did you work your way through that? The easy
Um,
answer is to, there's the door, see you later, right? That's the easy answer.
well, Well, here's a funny,
Yeah.
I speaking to that, um, we were on a Zoom with the whole company, and I said, um, for those of you, who don't want to return to work in the office, I'm let me know or send me an email, and I'm happy to pay you, I think, 8 weeks severance, and you don't have to return back.
Very firm.
Well,
Line in the sand.
I I didn't get a single person
Yeah.
that resigned,
Yeah.
but somehow everybody took that statement as me kind of being even more um, or less caring of people.
Hmm.
Like I'm giving you, I don't, I'm giving you, I don't have to do that, right? And
Sure.
you're criticizing me because of that. And I realize in certain situations, people want what they want,
Hmm.
and there's nothing you're going to do to convince them otherwise.
Hmm.
And in a lot of those cases, there was nothing I could do that would convince them because at that moment, uh, they they didn't see me as someone coming from a genuine place, even though I was, uh, and there was no convincing them. Um, so um, I propped up my ego a little bit, uh, got prepared when they came back for, you know, uh, a less than pleasant experience. Tried to find my allies um, and um, have them help me to spread um, the positive word uh, and create what once was in existence pre-COVID.
Hmm.
Um, so it was a challenge. It was challenging, and I will say I had the whole leadership team on my side because I did tell them um, that I said, look, I'm sick of trying to have this conversation with you guys and convince you of why this needs to happen. So you guys can decide whatever it is that you think is best for the organization. Um, and this was in the office. I said, you guys go talk. I'm going to step away. I don't want to be part of that conversation because I don't want you guys to be concerned with voicing your opinion with me there and come back and because I knew I couldn't do it without their support. Um,
Of course.
and you guys decide. And they came back and they decided we need to have him back in the office. That helped.
Well, I mean, it's always helpful when you have a supportive team around you, right? And
Yeah.
it's even better when you're able to give them the space and have the humility to say, I might be wrong about this. This is how I feel about it. Are you able to convince me otherwise? And you said it. Sometimes you just can't convince people that they're wrong and you're right. And it's not about being right or wrong, but it's your business, and this is sort of how you feel about it, and this is how you want the business to be run. Now, I'm a proponent of a hybrid or if you want to work from home and that works out for the company, then you work from home. If you want to work in the office, you work in the office, and we figure it out. Um, I'm not a big fan of the stringent, you know, you're returning to work, and if you don't want to return to work, see you later. But it seems like you tried to find middle ground, and you don't always have to be here, but the majority of the time we do want you in the office because we actually like you and we like who we work with. And I think
Right.
that's a dynamic difference where there isn't that contentiousness that a requirement of return to offices. When you're the first guest that I've had on here where I'm actually able to discuss this, because it's such a divisive and contentious issue, and like I agree, it doesn't need to be, right? Like we can,
No.
it both ways can work. Just here we happen to do it this way, and that's okay. I think
Right. I applaud companies that are, and there are plenty out there that are fully remote
Mhm.
and that are thriving.
Mhm.
In our industry in particular, we have a lot of young individuals.
Mhm.
This, as a recruiter, that is um, very often a new college grad that we hire and that we train, and it's challenging to get somebody equipped with those tools, and that is the only reason that um, I knew that we needed to be in office. And I like working with people, but being you
It's
know,
lonely enough being at the top, much less being in an empty office, right? So
yeah,
I can appreciate that. And I mean, hey, if there's pickleball to play, give me a racket. That sounds like a great.
that was just set up yesterday, actually. So,
Good for
um,
you. Good for you.
yeah,
Brad, it has been an absolute pleasure. And thank you so much for your candor and your honesty and everything that you've shared. Is there any parting thoughts, any gifts you want to leave us with that we didn't touch on?
no, I don't think so. I think I would just reiterate, everybody should do their best to make a positive impact on their community, on society. Um, be kind, assume positive intent.
I like that one.
Life will be much better.
Yeah. Yeah. Be generous in your assumptions. Totally agree. Thank you. Thank you again. And I look forward to the next time.
All right. Thanks, Chandler. Take care.
Thank you.